I am 31 years old. Married for over 10 years, my wife and I were each other's first. We have a child, 6 years old. A year ago, I was offered a one-year contract abroad at work. We discussed it as a family and I accepted. My wife and child stayed behind. We have our own nice apartment, not a bad car, savings. We help our parents, a full vacation several times a year, wherever you want, etc. From a material point of view, we live very well. I moved in, set up my household, started working. My task was to organize the work of our representative office in this country. Unfortunately, as it turned out later, I managed to do all this work in a little more than a few months. After that, I could only appear in the office occasionally. I had a lot of free time, the contract was running, the money was flowing, I could do what I wanted. However, I began to spend my time not on studying a new country, self-development, sports, hobbies, etc. I was just covered psychologically. I began to think constantly about my life, about the fact that I do not want it all. I live as if not my life. Day by day became more and more sad. I didn't like my job, even though it brought me a good income. I didn't like the city we lived in, but it was comfortable for living, for children's development. My child is not very much like me, more like my wife, and it annoys me. And many other things that I used to be afraid to admit to myself. I began to think about everything, about what did not satisfy me in my life. All my thoughts came out at once. I was bursting. I began to sleep badly. Often I couldn't sleep without alcohol. Then it only got worse. I quit. I became indifferent to food. I could drink tea and bread all day long, and that was it. I started thinking that it was all pointless, that I was unhappy. Everything was gray. What is all this for? What do I want out of life? I began to constantly ask all these questions to myself and could not find an answer. Among other things, I began to agonize over the fact that I had only had one woman in my life. I never cheated on my wife. Fidelity for me is the basis of a relationship. Yes, and with my wife over time, sex has only gotten better. There was nothing forbidden for us. We tried almost everything. Nevertheless, there was a worm in my head. There were these thoughts even before my contract. I consider myself a fairly sexually active man. Having sex 3 or 4 times a day is the norm for me. My spouse was not always in agreement. While married, I continued to watch porn. Maybe that's too explicit, but let it be. My worries and frustration developed for many months. The whole thing became another obsession. It went on like this for a very long time. With my family, we spent vacations together, talked on Skype, were constantly in touch. Of course, my wife could not help but notice my changed state, and I told her about all my mental worries, except, of course, my worries about women. She supported me very much, said that this crisis is natural, because I never lived alone, was not left to myself, my thoughts, the opportunity to know myself. And then I fell in love. In our business center, there are many companies with employees from our homeland. She worked in a neighboring office on the floor of our business center, settled in this country some time ago, a little younger than me. We would cross paths in the hallway or at the coffee machine, and sometimes we would have lunch together. When I first saw her, I didn't like her. All tattooed, dressed provocatively, smoking, etc. When she saw a new face, she came right over, introduced herself, started asking about me, and everything was so casual. As I realize now, it wasn't a sign of attention in my direction, it was just her being herself. After about 6 months after the acquaintance, when I have against the background of my thoughts formed an emptiness inside, I practically did not communicate with anyone, all the time painfully worried about my condition. After another casual communication with her, by that time we already knew a little about each other, she shared quite personal information. After that, I looked at her with loving eyes. She is very self-loving, impulsive, flighty, beautiful, sexy, covered in tattoos, smokes and drives a sports car, albeit an old and shabby one, knows what she wants out of life and gets high. She has so much energy, life, drive, emotions, and I am a boring, conservative, correct, exemplary husband and father. By the way, my parents were of age, Soviet type, brought up strictly and correctly, gave birth to me very late. I was strongly attracted to her. I thought about her all the time. The feelings were so strong that I stopped sleeping, stopped eating. I couldn't stand it and confessed that I loved her. She reacted calmly, said it was unexpected and she needed to digest it. At the same time, she was socializing with a man from the office. I saw them together often. I asked her if she was in a relationship. She said she was not, and that she was just friends with the guy, and he was married. She asked about my wife. I lied to her that we don't live with my wife as man and woman, and marriage is a formality while we are together because of the baby. Now I write this and very ashamed, but then I said these words easily and without remorse. The Darmony of love. We began to communicate more. Mostly we spent time in the car, went for fast food, less often in a cafe somewhere, and talked. She usually spoke, and I sat and listened and marveled at her rich life experience, her many adventures, sorrows, and betrayals. Her parents didn't need her. She started her independent life early, tried a lot of things in life. She has a daughter of 10 years old. I felt like a boy, envious. In general, I was somehow tense from the beginning. We are very different people with her. We had not much in common. Traveling, music, fast food. We went to the movies a few times, went outdoors. She allowed herself to be hugged and light kisses, nothing else. It made me angry because I am a very tactile person. I cannot without contact. In addition to her was a wild sexual attraction. But one day we went to a concert, and there was a miracle. She was completely different, all the time pressed against me, all the time looking into my eyes. That night we kissed like adults. I was happy. I hadn't had such emotions for years. I believed that everything could work out. But the next day she acted as if nothing had happened. Pickup artists call this strategy closer farther or hot cold, I think. Nevertheless, I continued to seek her affection. Naturally, I always and everywhere paid. A few times I just helped her financially, gave her money to live on. I turned into a drug addict. I couldn't do without her at all. It went on like that for months. I suffered. I wanted more. I asked her to give me certainty. I thought about divorce, division of property, moving to this country, looking for a place to live, reading about how to make friends with someone else's child. It just hit me like that. After a while, I asked her straight out, "Can you reciprocate?" To which she replied that she could, but she needed more time to get used to me. And right now she was having a really hard time because of loans, her father's illness, etc. She wasn't earning much. You have probably already guessed what the blindly in love madman did in the hope of getting reciprocity. That's right. He fully paid for her father's treatment at a good clinic and closed all her loans. She seemed grateful. But nothing changed in our relationship. Moreover, when after some time her car broke down, she naturally decided that I would pay for the cost of repairs. Then I couldn't stand it and tried to break up with her. I wrote that I suffered a lot from all this, that I could do something stupid, that we better not communicate, and then, without waiting for a response, blocked her in social networks. It was very painful. I've never felt that kind of heartache before. I just wanted to climb the wall. By that time in the office, I did not appear at all. All work was done from home remotely. Meetings with the head office, also by video in a tie and shorts, were from home. So it was almost 2 weeks. I began to let go a little. It was getting easier. The first days I just sobbed to tears, did not eat, did not sleep, and smoked 2 packs a day. But by the end of the second week, I even began to sleep, and I had an appetite. I ate everything that was in the fridge. During this time, I read and listened to a lot of material on my problem. It became easier. I did push-ups and sometimes went for walks. However, as they say now, the gestalt was not closed, and I decided to write to her, apologize that thus interrupted communication. I realized what happened to me, that it was a painful attachment, and now I'm coming to my senses. She reacted normally, asked how I was and everything. It got kinda okay. I guess subconsciously I thought things could still change. A couple days later, she texted first, asked how I was doing. I got excited and replied. Word by word, she shared that she had fallen in love and was getting married. She said that a guy she used to know showed her some attention, and she fell in love so much that she wants to fry his cutlets and have children with him. And all this, supposedly in the 2 weeks we haven't been in touch. This was said by a girl who got used to me for several months, taking into account all my actions. And then came a comrade with a bouquet, and she immediately fell in love. And she also admitted that she also had a relationship with that married guy from the office. After these words, I had a nervous breakdown. Before that, I had already realized that we would never be together. And here I just realized that I am a total sucker, that I was just taken advantage of. And not that even thank you will not say. I'm sure that she will never remember me. And I loved her. I thought I did. I'd do anything for her. Yeah, I felt sorry for myself. At that moment, I didn't think about what I was about to change. I didn't sleep for 2 days. I didn't eat. I smoked all the time. The pain was unbearable, bitterness, frustration, anger at myself. What it cost me not to go out the window from the 13th floor of my apartment, only I know. I was afraid that I would suffer before I died. I saw and understood everything from the beginning, but I refused to believe it. Looking for excuses, there was a love veil on my eyes. I have a well-developed intuition, but did I listen to it? Moreover, in difficult moments of life, I often have dreams that help me to make the right choice. When I fell in love and started to pursue her, what a stupid thing to do, God. I had 2 dreams. Bad ones. I ignored them, of course, and then everything happened exactly as it was in those dreams. She didn't introduce me to her parents or her daughter. She didn't introduce me to her friends. She was always texting on her phone even when we were together. She just turned out to be a mercantile woman with no moral principles who used me, and she didn't even have to sleep with me. Immediately realized that I had lost my mind with love for her, and squeezed what she could out of me. And I was going to cheat on my wife. Now, after the worst crisis and the pain I went through, my mindset is changing. I am becoming a different person. It's inevitable after something like this. I realized that I was actually a very immature person, infantile. That's why, probably, my psychological age at my biological age of 31 was at most 15 years. This is due to the fact that I, as they say, didn't get it on in my youth. I'm not just talking about sex with girls, but first of all about relationships with people who give me a better understanding of myself. This is the experience of something forbidden, the experience of some problems and how to solve them. That's what most people go through between the ages of about 14 and 20. I missed all that. Great kid, smart kid, family, career. And that's how it came out. My love was, of course, not love at all, but affection, multiplied by sexual attraction, and on the background of emptiness and personal crisis. I think that she is the me that I had inside me all the time, but which I suppressed. That's why I was attracted to her like a magnet. I used to want to get a tattoo, pierce my ear, and drive a sports car. I used to smoke at university and I liked it, but I quit because it's harmful. All the time I was afraid to try something new, went off the beaten path, terribly afraid of mistakes, and therefore did not get life experience that would help me to better know the real me. And in girls, I was looking for only a future wife, so despite the interest of girls, I never built a relationship with anyone. I was looking for an ideal and ran away from girls. Now I started to go to a psychologist. Why didn't I do it before? Typical male stereotype. Don't repeat my mistakes. If you feel bad, just run to a psychologist. If you have a toothache, go to the dentist. If you have a heartache, go to a psychologist. I realize that I understand absolutely nothing about psychology, people, relationships. I don't know myself very well, my true desires. I live in rose-colored glasses. I often remember that night when only the thought of going out the window and stop suffering gave relief. You should not take your life because of mental hallucinations. Go to a psychologist. I started working on improving my self-esteem. From the point of view of external data, I have everything great. Tall, handsome, trim, provided, kind, decent, and everything else. Girls often look at me and smile at me, but my self-esteem's down the drain. I've got a great student syndrome. All the time I set myself high goals, made excessive demands on myself. Hence the constant feeling of dissatisfaction, self-love. The most important thing right now, I have to deal with my feelings for my wife. I realize that since this situation happened, something is clearly wrong. I'm trying to remember how I felt when we got together. And I realized that at that time I didn't have the strong feelings that I had for that girl. My wife is a best friend, reliable, loyal, interesting. But it's not love anymore, is it? Now I don't know what love is, but I know what passion and emotional attachment are. On the one hand, I think about the fact that if I once again suppress my desires to be with a woman I would love madly and passionately, then it will inevitably go off, and my wife and I will just lose years of our lives. Will divorce give me relief and a chance to start a new life and find new love? What if it crushes? What if the crisis is worse than what I've been through? going through. On the other hand, I think it's worth trying to refresh the relationship with my spouse. After all, in everything except the attraction to her as a woman, she suits me. But perhaps that is the most important thing in a relationship. Objectively, she is an attractive woman, height, figure. As a person, gold. Maybe I just got used to it, so perhaps with everyone happens. Did you like this story? Let us know in the comments what you liked. Subscribe to our storytelling podcast. Also, don't forget to like and ring the bell so you don't miss more interesting stories. See you soon.